Hello and welcome. It's Wednesday, the 26th of March. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here on Arirang TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Meeting with the leaders of the US and Japan on the sidelines of a nuclear summit in the Netherlands, President Park Geun-hye calls on all three countries to deal with the North Korean nuclear issue in a united manner. North Korea fires 2 medium-range ballistic missiles towards the East Sea in the early hours of this morning. The missiles, which appear to be Nodong class, flew some 650 kilometers. Plus, lawmakers Ahn Cheol-soo and Kim Han-gil will co-head Korea's new opposition party, dubbed New Politics Alliance for Democracy, which officially launches later today. Our top story this morning: for the first time in 6 years, the leaders of South Korea, the US and Japan met following the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. It was also the first time President Park sat down for talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. But as widely expected, North Korea's nuclear issue dominated their talks. Our correspondent Choi You-sun, who was travelling with the president, filed this report.
The leaders of South Korea, the US and Japan reaffirmed their position that North Korea must completely, verifiably and irreversibly end its nuclear weapons program. Agreeing they will not engage in talks with the North unless it shows sincerity about giving up nuclear arms, the three countries decided to hold a trilateral meeting of their nuclear negotiators in the near future.
최근에 북한 정세의 유동성이 커지고 있는 가운데 북핵 문제와 관련해서 삼국 간의 공조가 기묘한 시점에 이렇게 오늘 오바마 대통령 또 아베 총리와 함께 의견 교환의 기회를 가질 수 있게 돼서 뜻깊게 생각합니다.
The Washington-led summit has garnered much attention, especially since it was the first between President Park and her Japanese counterpart amid strained bilateral ties over historical and territorial issues.
Being here as well, I think it's very important for our three nations to display this kind of unity and shared determination. It's an important message to our citizens. It's an important message to the Asia-Pacific region.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who has several times expressed his wishes to meet President Park despite his government's historical denials, seemed to have prepared a lot for Tuesday's meeting.
박근혜 대통령님을 만나서 반갑습니다.
As expected, the most contentious issues, such as Japan's denials of its colonial-era atrocities and its claims to Korea-controlled Dokdo Island, were not brought up Tuesday. President Park is now in Berlin for the first leg of her state visit. Here, she will hold summit talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and President Joachim Gauck to discuss strengthening bilateral ties and to seek German support for a reunification policy. Choi You-sun, Arirang News, Berlin.
So, as we just heard there, the trilateral summit was President Park's first official opportunity to sit down face-to-face with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. However, experts say the meeting will do little to mend the two countries' frosty relations. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Will Korea-Japan relations take a turn for the better following Tuesday's meeting between President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe? Their trilateral summit with U.S. President Barack Obama on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague was the first official meeting between the two leaders. President Park had refused to meet with Abe until he pledged to uphold Japan's 1993 apology issued to the victims of its wartime sexual enslavement. But most experts say the trilateral meeting will do little to mend strained Korea-Japan relations. This, as many believe that Tokyo's recent change in attitude lacks sincerity and has more to do with pressure out of Washington to improve its bilateral ties with Seoul.
Japan tends to behave depending on the circumstances and reveal its real stance again when the situation improves. It's a vicious cycle for Korea-Japan relations that rotates from a temporary mending of relations to a worsening of ties.
Japan's sincerity was put into question following a comment made by one of Abe's close aides last weekend. Just days after the Japanese leader promised to honor the 1993 apology, his special advisor, Koichi Hagiuda, raised the possibility of issuing a new statement over the so-called comfort women issue. He said Tokyo should consider issuing a new political statement if fresh findings emerge while the government verifies how the apology was prepared. Experts say such contradictory actions will only push the two neighbors further apart.
Just as the Japanese government is investigating its 1993 apology despite its pledge to uphold it ahead of the trilateral meeting, a Korea-Japan summit is not a likely possibility anytime soon unless there is a fundamental change in Tokyo's stance.
Besides, there are more occasions lined up in April that could stir up the current diplomatic feud, including an annual spring festival during which Abe may visit the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine again, just as he did in December. 황상희, Arirang News.
North Korea fired 2 more missiles into the East Sea in the early hours of this Wednesday morning. These ones had a much longer range than any of the others Pyongyang has fired over the past few weeks. South Korea's defense ministry says the firings are in clear violation of UN resolutions. Our Yulian reports.
2 mid-range ballistic rockets flew 650 kilometers from an area north of Pyongyang towards Japan before splashing into the East Sea early Wednesday morning. North Korea has been firing missiles into the East Sea over the past 2 months, but this particular type, which has been identified by South Korea's defense ministry as Nodong missiles, is a big step up. They have a maximum range of 1,200 kilometers, which means they can reach not just South Korea, but Japan as well. Given the more dangerous nature of the missiles, the Defense Ministry held an unusually early press briefing Wednesday morning and condemned the launch as an outright violation of UN resolutions. The launch of the Nodong missiles is the first in nearly 5 years and took place at around 2:30 a.m. Korea time, a matter of hours after the leader of South Korea, US, and Japan met to discuss North Korea's nuclear issues on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. The three had promised for a more united front against threats posed by North Korea's nuclear program, and the launch is being seen as an apparent protest against a growing call by the international community for the state's denuclearization. The launch also falls on the 4th anniversary of the sinking of a South Korean warship that left 46 dead. While Seoul blames the attack on North Korea, Pyongyang denies the charge. The launch also follows a series of shorter-range rocket launches over the past 2 months, which were seen as an act of defiance against the annual joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. Yurian, Arirang News.
The 3rd Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague came to a close on Tuesday, with the 53 countries taking part, adopting a communique. At this year's summit, world leaders focused on measures to prevent terrorists, criminals and unauthorized personnel from obtaining nuclear materials that could be used in developing nuclear weapons. They also urged countries that have not yet done so to become a party to the Convention of the Physical Protection of Nuclear Material, a key international legal body that addresses nuclear security issues. The leaders also vowed to make continuous efforts to achieve the common goal of strengthening international nuclear security architecture. The next summit will take place in 2016 in the United States. Now, with Washington set to hand over wartime control to Seoul at the end of next year, the top commander for U.S. forces in Korea says he's closely monitoring the readiness of Korea-U.S. combined forces to deal with North Korea's threats while pouring efforts into strengthening South Korea's military capabilities. Testifying before the Senate Armed Forces Committee on Tuesday, Army General Curtis Scaparotti said he's reviewing the OPCON transfer so Seoul can continue to enjoy the benefits of the two countries' military alliance. Seoul had been asking Washington to delay the transfer date from December 2015, citing growing nuclear threats from North Korea. South Korea and the US are expected to set the date at this year's high-level bilateral military talks in October.
That a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. Lawmakers Ahn Cheol-soo and Kim Han-gil will co-head Korea's new opposition party dubbed New Politics Alliance for Democracy, which officially launches on this Wednesday afternoon. Announcing its structural and operational plans at the National Assembly on Tuesday, officials said Ahn and Kim will head the party for 1 year until it elects a party chairman and leadership next year. The new party will select candidates to stand in the upcoming June local elections through inter-party primaries and votes by the public. The launching ceremony, which will be attended by citizens from all walks of life, gets underway at 2 p.m. Korea time in southern Seoul. The wheels are in motion on President Park Geun-hye's drive towards deregulation. Starting as early as May, it will no longer be illegal for individuals to renovate commercial trucks into food trucks. It comes just 5 days after the president pledged to cut the volume of regulations by 20% over the next 2 years. Connie Kim reports.
In line with President Park Geun-hye's plan to cut regulations on business activities, it'll be legal for individuals and businesses to renovate commercial trucks into food trucks starting as early as May. The Transport Ministry made the announcement Tuesday, and it follows a request by a food truck manufacturer made during a special televised debate last week. Food trucks are currently categorized as special automobiles, and therefore it's illegal to renovate other types of trucks for the purposes of serving food on them. While it normally takes 40 days for such a change to take place, the Transport Ministry plans to expedite the process and shorten the period to 20 days. In other plans, the ministry says it'll ease regulations on the tuning of automobiles and will allow for the renovation of vans into camping cars and vehicles for the disabled by the end of this year. The move comes after President Park Geun-hye last Thursday stressed that reforming current regulatory measures would encourage businesses to invest actively, which would ultimately lead to job creation. President Park pledged to cut the volume of registered regulations to 80% of the current level by 2016. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Korea and New Zealand will hold a 6th round of talks over their bilateral free trade deal in Seoul for 3 days starting today. Korea's trade ministry says the two sides are determined to make progress on areas including rules of origin, trade in services as well as investment. This is the second time this year that Seoul and Wellington are sitting down for trade talks. The negotiations, which were stalled in May 2010, resumed in February this year, during which the two were unable to narrow their differences, especially on the agricultural sector. New Zealand is Korea's 44th largest trading partner, with the bilateral trade volume reaching nearly $3 billion last year. The first female chief conductor of a Korean public orchestra will lead her very first regular performance this week. Song Si-yeon took the reins of the Gyeonggi Philharmonic Orchestra earlier this year. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won gives us a sneak peek.
The Gyeonggi Philharmonic Orchestra is busy rehearsing for its first regular concert this year, where they will perform Mahler's Symphony No. 2, Resurrection. The orchestra is receiving an unusual amount of media attention these days because of its music director, Song Si-yeon. When she was appointed to the position earlier this year, she became Korea's first ever female chief conductor in charge of leading a public orchestra. Blazing trails is nothing new for Song. In 2006, she became the first woman ever to win the prestigious Sir George Shorty International Conductors Competition in Germany. She followed that honor up the next year by winning the Gustav Mahler Conducting Competition and has worked as the first woman assistant conductor at the Boston Symphony in the United States. She was also the assistant conductor at the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra up until last year. The 38-year-old is well known on the international music scene for her ability to balance orchestral sound. She explains why she chose Mahler's Symphony No. 2 Resurrection as the Gyeonggi Philharmonic Orchestra's first regular concert of 2014.
The Mahler Symphony is majestic and magnificent in its character, and it demands a lot of practice. I wanted to show that the Philharmonic is entering a new phase and show the audience our new determination.
The Gyeonggi Philharmonic Orchestra was founded in 1997 and is full of youthful energy. The average age of its members stands at just 34.
During my 2 years as music director, improving the overall sound of the orchestra is my first priority. I also hope to present good performances by the Gyeonggi Philharmonic on the global music scene.
The Gyeonggi Philharmonic's Mahler Symphony No. 2 concert will be held at 8 p.m. on Thursday at Seoul Arts Center. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now for a look at some of our international headlines we're following this Wednesday morning. We're going to turn it over to Eunice Kim, who is standing by at the news center. Good morning to you, Eunice.
Hi there, Mark. We'll begin with an update on tensions over Ukraine, including the Russia-annexed Crimea. And in The Hague Tuesday, U.S. President Barack Obama put on display his growing rift with Russia by calling it a regional power that's threatening its immediate neighbors not out of strength, but out of weakness. This as CNN reports, citing a U.S. official, that Russia has boosted its military presence along its border with Ukraine by another 10,000 troops. NATO chief Anders Fogh Rasmussen noted he was very much concerned about Russia's military buildup along the border regions and that NATO has plans in place to help defend its allies. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, ultra-nationalist leader Oleksandr Mushiko, who played a role in recent anti-government protests, was reported to have died during a police raid to arrest him. His group, Right Sector, has promised revenge. And search crews along the southern corridor will resume their efforts today to locate debris from the missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. This as gale winds that had forced a pause on Tuesday have died down. 2 Korean jets will join assets from 5 different countries, making up a fleet of 12 planes and 2 ships that will scour the remote waters of the southern Indian Ocean. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority said today's search will focus on some 80,000 square kilometers of ocean southwest of Perth. And following Malaysia's announcement that all 239 people on board had died, investigators are closely considering the suicide mission theory. The British daily The Guardian cites a source close to the investigation as saying this being a deliberate act by someone on board when considering the routing, signaling, and communications data transmitted from the aircraft. Turning now to Egypt, where a Cairo court considers the fate of nearly 700 defendants on Tuesday after it handed death sentences to more than 500 others one day before. Among the defendants is a spiritual leader of the now outlawed Muslim Brotherhood, Muhammad Badi. The group is standing trial on charges related to violent riots in August triggered by a deadly crackdown on supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Only 62 of the 682 were present for the trial at Minya Criminal Court. There were also no defense lawyers present Tuesday as they boycotted the proceedings they deemed unfair. Foreign governments and rights groups also agreed the United Nations condemning the mass trials as breaching international law. At least 17 were killed in the latest string of suicide attacks in Afghanistan on Tuesday, as the country gears up to host presidential elections in less than 2 weeks. Among the 3 attacks was one at a Kabul election office. 2 suicide bombers blew themselves up as other Taliban militants stormed the buildings. A spokesman for the country's interior ministry said 2 police officers, a candidate, and an election commission officer were among those killed, but the death toll could have been higher had security forces not engaged them in a firefight. The gun battle is said to have lasted 5 hours before the group of militants were also killed. And a new report from the World Health Organization dubbed air pollution as the single biggest environmental health risk. It linked indoor and outdoor pollution to some 7 million deaths annually, or 1 in 8 deaths in 2012, which is more than double the amount noted in previous estimates. This is because scientists now know more about the impact of air pollutants and can confidently link them to conditions like heart disease and cancers, in addition to respiratory diseases. And to put some perspective to the 7 million figure, that's more deaths than those connected to smoking, traffic accidents, and diabetes combined.
Well, it's been over a month since we last saw figure queen Kim Yeon-a's final performance at the Sochi Winter Games, and on Tuesday, her agency, All That Sports, have announced a theme for the upcoming ice show. With their farewell ice show taking place at the Seoul Olympic Gymnastics Gymnasium from May 4th to the 6th, the theme of the ice show will be Adios Gracias, or Goodbye Thank You. A fitting theme for the ice show, as Kim Yeon-a will be joined by some of the top names in figure skating to celebrate her 18 years in the sport and thank her fans who supported her during all those years. Meanwhile, tickets will go on sale April 1st at 7 p.m. local time. And staying on the ice, the South Korean women's curling team, also known as Curls Day, have come back home after finishing 4th during the Curling World Championships in Canada. Despite losing to Russia and failing to earn a bronze medal at the World Championships, the team was welcomed back with a huge crowd of fans and media. The players stated that in place of the bronze medal they missed out on by 1 point, they gained more experience as they hope to continue their success in future international events. Well, speaking of coming back to Korea's sidearm flamethrower, Im Chang-young, who has been trying to make the Chicago Cubs roster during the spring training, might be returning home as well. The former Samsung Lions closer, who was recently released by the Chicago Cubs, might now be coming back to the KBO, as it was reported that the Cubs have sold the contract to the Samsung Lions. And while the 38-year-old hasn't commented just yet on whether to retire or play, experts believe that with the addition of Im Chang-young, the Samsung Lions will once again be the favorites to win the title this season. And finishing things off in basketball with Game 2 of the best-of-5 semifinals between the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus and Seoul SK Knights. Now, of course, going into the first quarter here, the SK Knights take a comfortable 19-13 lead before heading into halftime with a 34-28 lead. But in the third quarter of the game, Mobis rallies big, taking a 54-49 lead going into fourth quarter. But the SK Knights, with a huge fourth quarter, rallies back with Courtney Sims putting up 17 points and 5 rebounds as the SK Knights even the series with a 74-69 win. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
The daily highs will be similar to what we had yesterday, reaching to upper teens in most regions. But in the capital, highs will soar to 21 degrees Celsius, so it could feel somewhat hot this afternoon under lots of sunshine here in Seoul. And yes, it's still raining on and off in the southern provinces, but it will gradually let up as we head into the afternoon, and skies should begin to clear shortly, which will allow temperatures to climb to relatively warm side. And it looks like this unseasonably warm weather will persist throughout the week. temperatures remaining about 10 degrees higher than seasonal averages across the regions under plenty of sunshine. So do keep that in mind, and here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will rise to 21, and Daegu and Gwangju should top out at 19 and 16 respectively, while Busan get up to 18. Now for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju will peak to 17, Daejeon will climb up to 19, while the top temperatures on Mount Kumgang will be at 14. Well, that's all for now, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Okay, well, that's all for now. We'll be back at noon Korea time. In the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening news-wise on our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news.